Each meeting was addressed by a different medium, and each medium, it seemed to me, was focusing her entire attention exclusively on me. I began to think it was all part of a conspiracy to convert me to spiritualism. At the third meeting, the psychic demonstrator was Mrs. Elizabeth Cannock, whom I later came to know as a very good medium, highly respected for her gifts and her integrity. She singled me out at once, saying in an unequivocal terms, "You are a medium and have much work to do. Chosen by the spirit world, you must not ignore the call. Please come and see me after the meeting." I did so, and we discussed my spirit people and their voices. I told her there had been many times when I had feared I was suffering from hallucinations. So strongly had this idea been implanted in my mind as a child by my father. Even now, I could not bring myself to believe her when she declared that she knew beyond all doubt that I was a medium. I asked her for proof of her words, proof by some happening that was entirely outside my mind and unconnected with myself in any way. Only in such circumstances could I be convinced of her faith in me and the mystic work she said that lay ahead of me. Only then would I feel that I could go into the world and say with conviction, "I know." She readily conceded my point and said, "Go home and sit at a table. I am confident they will make physical contact with you." I did as I was bid. I went straight home and sat alone at a table, expectant and apprehensive. Nothing happened that night, or any of the next 6 nights when I repeated the procedure. I just sat there, silent and solitary, until I began to feel more than a little foolish. The table did not so much as wobble. I decided to have one final session. I sat again the next night, and the result was exactly as before. When I could stand it no longer, I got up in disgust, telling myself that other people might be mediums, but I certainly was not. I picked up the table and I carried it across the room to its accustomed place by the opposite wall. It was a solid table with tripod legs, and it required considerable effort for me to lift it. Well, that's that, I thought. I shall not be so easily persuaded next time. I turned and began to walk away. As I did so, the table rose into the air and hit me firmly in the back. I stood momentarily in astonishment, and then ran in panic to the far end of the room. The table pursued me inexorably within inches of my back. When I stopped, it stopped, too, returning to the floor with a thump. After the first shock had subsided, I immediately realised that this was proof of the existence of a power outside myself that I had demanded. And with this realisation came a reaction of intense gratitude. Turning round, I put one hand on the table and said, "Thank you, whoever you are." It's difficult in retrospect to analyse an emotion, especially one which has no other parallel to use for comparison. I can only describe it as a grave and wonderful moment in which I felt as though my whole being had been reborn into a new level of consciousness. I was still trying to adjust myself to what had happened when I saw and heard my guide for the first time. A voice said in stilted, too precise English, "I come to serve the world. You serve with me, I serve with you." I asked, "Who are you?" The voice replied, "I am Red Cloud." As these words were spoken, I saw the top part of a man's figure surrounded by a halo of white light. His skin was olive-coloured, his eyes were dark, and he wore a small black beard. In that moment, I was aware as surely as if Red Cloud had told me that all had gone before in my past life. The privation, the long hours of manual work, and particularly my spirit voices, had been part of a preconceived pattern, and now the pattern was complete. I knew with unwavering certainty that my true mission in life, whatever it may be, had just begun. A week after I first saw Red Cloud, I invited Arthur, my husband, to sit with me. We drew the curtains, making sure that no light from outside could enter, and then sat down on 2 chairs we had placed opposite each other. Arthur took the bigger of the 2, a heavy chair upholstered in leather, leaving me a cheap little chair, having a thin wooden seat pierced with an intricate pattern of small holes. We sat facing one another in total darkness, and awaited some manifestation of the spirit power which I now knew existed. We had not long to wait. Almost at once, a brilliant golden light shone down from above my head, enveloping me in its rays like a theatrical spotlight. Arthur's reaction was immediate. "Where are you, Estelle?" he demanded. "Where have you gone to?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I had not moved from my chair, and I thought for a moment he was playing some game with me. Rather impatiently, I replied, "I haven't gone anywhere. I'm just sitting where I've been sitting all the time." "But you can't be," he said. "Your chair's empty." "I can see it quite clearly. The seat, the back, all of it. The chair's empty." But it was my turn to be surprised. "But Arthur, it isn't empty. I'm sitting here just as I was before." "My dear," he insisted, "you're not. I tell you, the chair is empty." I pondered this uncomprehendingly. Quite certainly, I had not moved from the chair, and as far as I was concerned, no change had taken place in the room since we sat down, except for the unexplained appearance of the light overhead. "You say you can't see me," I said, "yet I can't have gone. Otherwise, I shouldn't be able to answer you as I'm doing now." "Well, I can't see you," he replied, "but I can see the chair you were sitting in, and I can even see the holes in the seat." "Then tell me how many holes there are." He leaned forward, and with his forefinger traced the pattern of the holes, counting each one as he came to it. He could feel nothing of my body sitting on the chair, nor could I feel the touch of his hand. A few minutes later, the golden glow overhead was extinguished as mysteriously as it had appeared. We were left sitting face to face in the darkness. Arthur got up and put on a light, turning quickly as he did so, to see if I was really there. Then he came over and stood by me. "Let me have a look at that chair, my dear," he said. I stood up, and together we counted the holes patterned in its seat. They totalled precisely the number Arthur had counted not 5 minutes earlier. Some years later, a similar happening, though working in reverse, when a psychic photographer exposed his camera on me. The photographer could clearly see me sitting on the chair, but when the photograph was developed, only the chair was to be seen in the picture. I had somehow been eliminated. In 1922, my son Terry was born, and when he was a year old, the whole family had a narrow escape from disaster. One evening, I had been to the spiritualist church to listen to Mrs. S.D. Kent, a medium whom I had always wanted to meet. After the meeting, Mrs. Kent walked home with me. When we arrived, we found Arthur giving a chest of drawers a much-needed coat of white paint. As we entered the sitting room, Mrs. Kent looked around and asked, Why are you painting it all white when everything else in the room is black? Neither Arthur nor I had the least idea what she meant by this question, and she could not explain her words. As far as I could see, there was nothing black in the room, but as Mrs. Kent offered no further comment, I thought it best to let the matter drop. However, we were soon to be enlightened. The significance of her apparently meaningless statement was brought home to us in no uncertain fashion 2 nights later. The room in which we slept had a double bed, which stood in a corner at one side pressed against the wall. You've been listening to a reading of 50 Years a Medium by Cassandra Recovered. The book is written by Estelle Roberts. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Take care.